Hey everyone, my name is Keith. So thank you very much for taking part in this study and answering the questions that you have so far. As you know, this is a collaboration between Simply Business and UCL on learning how can we get the most effective feedback that can help our employees achieve their potential. And just part of that, I'd ask you not to discuss the video or the questions that you see or get asked with anyone else in business for the moment, because your answers may be different to theirs and might lead to some confusion. And we don't want anyone thinking that they're doing anything wrong. So if you can just hold tight until August, September, where we're able to share all the results of this study, we'd be really very grateful. So just thank you very much for that in advance. So I'm going to go on and talk to you a little bit about what we'll be covering in today's session. We're going to talk about what is feedback seeking and the obstacles to seeking feedback. We're going to talk about the strategies that you can use for seeking feedback effectively. We're going to use some tips on how to do that and how to seek that feedback most effectively. And we're going to get you to do some exercises after this video on how to apply these learnings to your actual real life. Great. So we're going to talk about getting effective feedback for your goals. So first of all, what is feedback seeking behavior? Well, this is proactively seeking feedback about your performance, the role or position that you occupy in a company, what you might be doing in that, and also the job targets that you may have, and actually getting feedback on how all this is doing and how you were doing in relation to all these from other individuals in the company or other leaders. They don't necessarily have to be your line manager or your direct leaders. It could be anyone around you. And I want to emphasize that feedback is primarily the responsibility of the receivers. What I mean by that is it's our responsibility to go get that feedback, to listen to it and to act on it when we do get it. It's an important process that should occur regularly and continuously in an organization. It shouldn't be something that just happens once a month, once every 6 months, once a year. We can do it all the time. So if you aren't sure what the benefits of seeking feedback are, it leads employees to gain a lot more control over how they work. It's been found from academic literature that it leads to much greater job satisfaction and well-being because we know what we should be doing. We can get better at it. And it's been found to increase learning, our performance in actual tasks, so we actually get better at what we're doing, and actually can allow us to be a lot more creative in how we solve problems when we face them at work, because we learn how skills that we can apply in one context, we can apply to another. We also learn what we kind of shouldn't be doing, and once we kind of get rid of that, we can open ourselves up to a whole world of possibility. So potential obstacles that you might face to feedback seeking behavior at any organization, but maybe it's in business. One of them is social pressures, and I think everyone can kind of understand this. Sometimes asking for feedback, we can be worried that it could be interpreted as a sign of weakness, or make us look uncertain about what we should be doing, or may even just like give off a sense of that maybe we're not very confident. And this could be especially true for long-term employees and not necessarily new people into the business, where people think, oh, well, I'm afraid to ask for feedback in case people say, well, you should know this, you've been here for so long, how do you not know this? And these are always perceived obstacles. I don't think that's what we're like. It's in a business and certainly shouldn't stop you from seeking feedback. There's also costs in relation to getting feedback, and one is something we call ego costs, which is quite simply, how will I view myself if I get feedback that I'm uncomfortable with? Another is just simply the amount of effort that's involved in getting feedback. So I have to think about the time that it will take to set up the potential meeting if we have to set it up, or the kind of time I spend thinking about it. And all these are kind of added extra costs to the idea of getting feedback. And of course, there's a problem of inference. So once we get this feedback, what is it that we do? We want to interpret the information, and like, do we forget it in case we haven't written it down? Do I slightly misunderstand something that's been said? So all these things in our own minds can actually prevent us from actually seeking out feedback. They're not really that great obstacles, but they're things that we can overcome to ensure that we do get feedback. So how will we reduce these obstacles and the external obstacles first of all? So first of all, we can just reduce the stigma of feedback seeking. So we can create those organizational norms where we have a culture of open and honest communication, where we simply just make it the norm that we ask for feedback, we give feedback. It's not unusual then in that case, it's just what happens on a regular basis. But we can also think about, well, what are the choices of channels to seek feedback through? Well, maybe people can't dedicate the time for a one-to-one meeting for an hour. Well, maybe we can get quicker, shorter feedback through different use of technology like Slack, email, WhatsApp. We might say, okay, we can't do it in this context. Maybe we'll go for a quick coffee when we don't want to be inside in a room. So we can think about how and where and what methods we can use to get feedback through rather than simply relying on that typical evaluation performance session that's in the calendar. Um, so when talking about reducing internal obstacles to feedback, we want to adopt a learning goal orientation. So this is just a simple view of the world that allows us to kind of put the emphasis on acquiring new skills and learning from past experiences, and allows us to master novel situations when they occur. So we've adopted this whole kind of orientation that everything's an opportunity to be learned from. It's been found to positively relate to how much effort we put in, and the belief in ourselves that we can do something, which we call self-efficacy in psychology. It's been found to lead to improvements in performance and just improvement in general, all the whole host of things that's not necessarily related to being at work. And so, yeah, I would just say below here, learning orientation is positively related to seeking information for self-improvement. So when you have this orientation, you always think of how to constantly get better and actually how do you go about getting it. As negatively related to the seeking of self-validation information. So what this is, instead of going out going, am I okay? Am I doing okay? Like trying to make myself feel maybe a little bit more at ease. Actually, that can prevent us from asking the right questions that can allow us to learn how to get better and to improve. And so we're going to talk about the different strategies around feedback. So one strategy that you can adopt, which is perfectly valid, is monitoring. So this is how we observe what's going on around us, other individuals, and our own behavior to kind of gather information about performance and the behaviors that are going to get rewarded or are going to be successful where we work. So we can observe what, for instance, other people in our teams are doing, what they get rewarded for, or we can think about, well, what meetings should I be in for my goals? Am I in the right ones? Am I in the wrong ones? Where do I need to be? And this is kind of quite an active strategy, but it's very indirect in the sense that we're not really asking what we should be doing. We're just monitoring what's going on, making our own judgments and taking action on the back of that. And inquiry is another strategy that we can use. And this is more directly asking for feedback, where we simply go, hey, how did I do in that scenario? How was my speech? Did I do a good job? Asking directly for feedback from a person that we want it from. And this is highly active, and it is also high effort, but it's much more direct, and it's, you could say, more efficient. But the thing is, both of these strategies are perfectly valid, and they're both perfectly useful, and we can do them all the time or in different ways when we need to. So it's not an either or scenario. So just want to give you some tips on how to get effective feedback. So we want to ask specific open-ended questions. So think about things like saying, what's the one thing can improve, or what's the one thing that could have done better in that meeting or presentation? Avoid asking yes or no questions. They can be quite constraining for you and for the person responding. So instead of like, was that okay? Did you like this? Ask questions about, well, how do you think that would go? Or what could I have done differently? And differently is a great word because it doesn't have the judgment of good or bad upon yourself. It's simply going, well, was there a different way for me to do that? Would it have resulted in a different outcome? And lots of people will see things differently and give you those perspectives from all angles. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about asking, the idea of doing differently versus good or bad. We should definitely ask, and you should always ask for clarifications and examples when someone gives you feedback. So when someone says, oh yeah, I would prefer if you did that. So could you just go a little bit further and say, well, can you explain what you mean by that? How could I have been more in a certain way? Like, for instance, more confident in that speech? Like, what would have given me those elements that I needed? What kind of things should I be doing more? And that makes it much more specific when you get those feedback on how you can actually change for the future. Rather than you thinking, okay, well, they want me to be a certain way, but actually, what does that actually look like? What would be the things that would help me get there? And importantly, take time and listen and digest that feedback, and don't feel that you need to have the answer straight away or make changes straight away. Especially, people can only take in one critical comment at a time in general. So don't be afraid to ask for some time to reflect on that feedback. Don't be afraid to schedule a time for follow-up sessions. Go, okay, I've got some extra questions about this. Do you think I could kind of get that into it with you a little bit more? And also help you make a plan to change and improve how you take in an action and change in relation to feedback. And finally, just, don't just look to bosses for feedback. Don't look to your line manager. You're not the only ones that are qualified to give you feedback. Everyone's qualified to input. There's a lot of ways that colleagues around us can help. Both, we've often think of scenarios where we've been on the phone call, we've probably just turned around and said, hey, can you help me with this? What would you do in this situation? What might I have done differently in that call to get that different result? And managers are the exact same way. There's lots of ways that we've probably turned to other managers in the business and gone, what would you in this scenario? rather than waiting for maybe checking in with someone like a leader in the business, and get as many perspectives on your goals and how you want your performance to be evaluated from as many different areas as you can. And hopefully all this will help kickstart like a regular feedback loop with our colleagues around us, so that we can kind of offer feedback all the time and observations about what we're seeing around us, and praising each other for the work that we're doing well, and helping us when we feel that colleagues around us are maybe having a trip up. This would really contribute to a fantastic organization that I know that we're all trying to build. So thank you very much for listening to that. We're going to ask you to finish up with the video now and move on to the next page and answer some follow-up questions before the study ends.